Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming in. I'm Bill Brown.
I'm Chris Padilla.
This is Sports Shorts and More, Episode 3, Take 2. So we were saying, and you weren't hearing, but we want to say it again. We had a chance yesterday to sit down with someone for our first interview. We interviewed Richard Skinner from WKRC TV, Channel 12. He's a sports anchor there and one of the guys on the Sports Authority on Sunday night. He's covered pretty much every major sport in Cincinnati for over 20 years, hosted radio shows. He's now covering the Bengals full-time for KRC, and it was just a wonderful half an hour or so of good stories.
Yeah, he had a lot of great information. Probably the most knowledgeable sports person I think I've ever met.
Yeah, he could talk anything. Yeah, that's true.
And we really appreciated him taking some time out of his day to sit down and talk with us, talk about sports, and we're going to show it to you in just a minute. You'll get to hear everything he had to say. Yeah,
so and you guys know why we're doing the show. There's so many correlations between sports and what we do at the Recovery Center and the sports community and our community. And we talk about some of that every week, but Richard was really cool about sharing stories of people that he knows that have overcome some adversity and this kind of inspiring stuff.
Yeah, and he mentioned teamwork as well and working as a team. And he also got a chance to kind of talk about role models, people that have been his mentor over the years, and also how he tries to give back to others that are new to the business. So we're happy to be sharing this with you.
So here's what's going to happen. We're going to play the video, and it's going to look a lot like this, only we're going to be wearing different clothes. So don't let that throw you off. There's nothing wrong with your set. You're just fine. That's actually happened. We're going to be wearing different clothes, and the video is maybe half an hour long or so, and then we're going to talk about it for a minute and talk about some more sports. So while we play the video, you're going to see us, Chris and I, in a little box on the corner of the screen. Pay no attention. You won't be able to hear us. And if we knew how to get rid of the box, we would. But we're working with the box today.
If I could have wore the same clothes 2 days in a row, if I had known that, I would have. It would save me a little laundry.
You should hang out with the staff more because you fit right in. All right, video time.
Chris also has a laptop over there, so he can also interact with people and comment back to them if he wants to.
Fantastic.
Oh, so great. You guys can type in comments, and we can actually type back to you. And then afterwards, we can talk about your comments.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah, of course. So we're going to mute this.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on Sports Shorts and More. I'm Bill.
I'm Chris Padilla.
And we are very proud to be able to bring you an interview this morning with someone who is firmly entrenched in the Cincinnati sports community. We're talking with Richard Skinner from WKRC TV. Richard has been with KRC since 2001, I believe, starting as a part-time anchor. He's a regular panelist on the Sports Authority on KRC Sunday nights. I remember him best as one of the angry guys, one of the two angry guys on sports radio. He's covered the Bengals for the Cincinnati Enquirer since 2008, and before that for the Cincinnati Kentucky Post. Basically, if there's sports going on in the tri-state area, Richard Skinner has been covering it. Yes. So, Richard, thank you so much for coming on with us. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. We want to talk to you a little bit about community before we start talking about sports. And the reason we want to do that, Richard, is we've started this show to kind of draw from sports and to relate to what we do as a profession, which is recovery. And we found that there are a lot of crossovers in what works in sports and what works in recovery. And one of those things is building a sense of community. We work very hard to build a sense of community at the Recovery Center. And right now, for the past 2 months, our community has kind of been obliterated. And we're trying to find new ways to stay together. And so we're really working on a virtual community. And you should be knee-deep in baseball right now. The NBA playoffs should be just about wrapping up. We should have hockey over. And so what's that loss of community look like for you?
Yeah, I cover the Bengals mostly on a daily basis, and so I'm with 5 to 7 people from different venues. Enquirer reporter, a couple guys from the Athletic.com, guy from ESPN, and we, over time, and it's like a lot of things with coworkers, right? Or even in this case, competition. But we're together so much that you become friends, and at the very least, you become friendly. And for a lot of us, we become friends, and we're at Paul Brown Stadium during the season every day together, and we talk about our families together. We share stories together, and can't do that right now. It was really, I thought, kind of cool for us after the NFL draft, and it's a busy work weekend. And when it was over, one of the Bengals media relations people reached out to those of us that are there every day, and he said, "Hey, I know you guys are all busy, but how about 10:30 or 11 o'clock tonight? Hopefully you're done. We can get in a Zoom together and just swap stories." And we did that. We did that till 2 o'clock in the morning.
That's awesome.
And it felt good. I mean, we all looked grungy. We all had ball caps and T-shirts, and we looked awful, and we probably smelled awful, but we couldn't smell each other. I mean, it's just that weekend is a lot of work, but it was so good after all that just to laugh with each other again.
Yeah.
And you do miss that. What I do for a living a lot of times, I am able to work from home because I do a lot of stuff for our website at local12.com. And that's primarily my role. So I'm able to kind of, even through all this, work isolated by myself. But during that season, as I mentioned, there's no isolation, man. There is a sense of community. There is that group of people that were there every single day. And we miss that. I think we all miss that. And yeah, you can call them on the phone, and we've done that a little bit, but it's not the same as kind of what we're doing right now. None of that's the same. So that was good. And we've kind of tried to promise ourselves we're going to do it again, actually, maybe hopefully this week, to just, again, couple 3 hours, just share stories, swap a laugh, all those things. And so that's been tough, but that was really cool to see, to have that night.
That's a great story. It's a great example of keeping the community together. And I'm glad you brought it up. It's probably happening in a lot more industries than I thought, because at the end of the day, I think we're finding, at least I am, Richard, I had no idea how much human contact I needed in my life.
Right.
It was all taken away. And then I'm like, whoa, this is a mess. So I appreciate that a ton. For me, emotionally, it's kind of touch and go, right? Sometimes it's worse than it is others. But what have you found emotionally or mentally that you've had a challenge with in the last couple of months?
I'll be honest. I've kind of held it together a little bit. I think for me, it's mostly I have a college-age daughter who came home from the University of Kentucky,
Okay.
and she's a dance theater major. So a dance theater major doing online classes can be a lot of a challenge, right? I mean,
yes.
a lot of her finals and stuff aren't papers or tests or filling out bubbles on cards. It is performing. She had 2 performances that she was going to be in this summer at the Incline House, and those got canceled. And so really for myself, it's kind of keeping her in line. And she's had a couple of crying moments, and I get it. I'm not a big crier. I'm pretty good at either deflecting or absorbing or all those things. And maybe that's a fault, but that's just, you get to a certain stage in your life and that's what you are.
Right.
For her, the only thing I told her, and I'm a basketball coach, a high school basketball coach as well, and I'm a big one on saying to my players a lot of times, the only thing you can do is control what you can control. And I told her that. I said, you can't control that you're home for college. I said, you know what you can control? You're a dancer. You can control staying in shape. You can control working out. You can control working on some dance moves. You can control going and visiting maybe, and she's done a couple of online dance classes where, somebody's working you through some things. I said, you can control those things. So when the time comes when we're back to whatever normal is, right? We still don't know what normal is. You'll be ready, as opposed to sitting here and sobbing every day and feeling sorry for yourself and feeling sorry for the situation. And then in 3 months, you haven't worked out and you didn't stay in shape and you didn't stay in touch and you didn't stay in tune. And then guess what? You're behind the 8 ball big time. So control what you can control. I said, get through the semester. She did. I said, I get it. And you're going to have a couple more sad days. And we've probably talked to, and she and I are I'd say we're close, but she's closer to my wife than she is to me. And we've taken some long walks and she's opened up about stuff I never would have believed she'd open up to me. So, to me, it's more about her, to be honest with you, than anything else. Just I get it. It stinks. I feel so sorry for every high school senior that missed their spring sports season, every high school senior that missed their graduation, college senior in graduation. My daughter, who her first 2 years plus of college experience was great, and all of a sudden you're uprooted and you come home. And I said, listen, that's the worst thing that happens in your life, that you had to come home for 2 months out of college. You're going to have a hell of a life. I promise you. Your life's going to be pretty good. If this is the worst thing you go through, buddy, that's it.
That's similar feedback I gave to my kids. I've got 4 kids. One's in high school. He lost his baseball season.
Awful.
He was a freshman in college. That's the same thing. There's worse things in life that happen than you lose in the last 2 months of your college season. And for my son, he's a baseball player. It was a lot of the same things. Hey, let's get out. Let's do soft toss into the net and hit. Let's get out there and toss every day. Let's keep those skills active so that at the time we were hoping baseball still may come back.
Right.
But it hasn't. But keep again, stay as active as possible and be ready for the next go round.
And I completely understand the focus on your daughter. That makes complete sense to me. I've got a son who's going to be a sophomore at Seton Hall, and he came home 3 months ago, and so it's given us more time to talk, which has been a blessing. It's been really nice.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think in the sense of my family, I feel like I've actually grown closer to my kids through this, because I feel like we've actually spent a lot more quality time together, because it's you're so used to rushing around and getting here and getting there. I feel like things have kind of slowed down, that I can actually have the kind of a father-son or father-daughter talk on maybe things that are troubling them or bothering them, and hopefully giving them some good feedback and advice.
Yeah, that's been the incredible part to this. As bad as this is for everybody, again, we talked about the loss of community for a lot of us. I would tell you probably from October the 1st or 15th, when basketball practice starts, through the end of March, between my work schedule and basketball, I'm lucky if I eat one meal at home a year in that time frame. So now it's you get carry out a day or so a week, but it's 5 or 6 meals at home, and even the carry outs now around the kitchen table. We play cards. I mean, it's stuff that you just never. You never found the time for, right? Because you didn't have the time for it, because your normal was getting up, working a 10-hour day, and then whatever avocation or hobby, or if you have kids sports or whatever, you rushed off to that, and you look up and it's 10 o'clock at night and you're exhausted, and the alarm goes off the next day. And so to some degree, this is, I don't want to call it refreshing, because it's not, because people have lost their jobs, they've lost their livelihood, they've lost their sense of self. But for some people, maybe this is a chance to hit the reset button. I don't want this to go on for another 6 months, 10 months, a year. Nobody does. I don't want this going for another 6 days, for goodness sakes. But to some degree, this is a good chance for, I think, everybody in every facet. Hit a little reset button. Let's go on. I mean, stop feeling sorry for yourself.
I completely agree with you. And I believe, I don't want to go on this road, but I believe we're going to be a lot nicer to each other coming out of this.
No doubt. I hope so. Yeah. I mean, it felt like we were that way for about 2 months after 9/11, and then we went back to what we were, right?
Right. That's a good point. Let's switch gears a little bit and start talking about what we brought you on for, sports. So what are you hearing from people in your community about when we might be able to see some live sports again?
Yeah, I mean, this whole baseball thing's been a little distressing, I guess, because it feels like every step forward is 2 steps backwards, right? There seems to be a plan, at least in general, in place to come back the 4th of July weekend, and then we hit the rut with money, and everybody wants to point the finger at one side or the other, and I think they're both to blame. I think the players are being a bit greedy, and I'm not sure that I'm not sure the owners are being worthy of their trust either, even if they do open the books to show them where we go from a revenue standpoint. The fear for me is we don't have a big window to get some of this negotiation done, right? If you're going to start 4th of July weekend, you're not going to all of a sudden go back on June 23rd and take some cuts in the cage and throw the ball a little bit and say, we're ready to go. That doesn't happen that way. I mean, I would assume if you're going to start July 4th, you need to get in some training camp, some spring training of some kind by June 1st. Well, here we are on the 19th of May, and negotiations are, especially when it comes to a very, very tough union, the players union, and a bunch of people who aren't going to part with money very easily, and the owners. I just don't know if we're going to get to that point. I hope we do, because it feels like every other part of the plan of playing without fans, unfortunately, is in place. There's some safety protocols. There's the no spitting, which I want to see how they're going to try to enforce that at some point. I still don't know how you enforce not spitting. No sunflower seeds, no fighting. They don't want players contacting each other. And I think some of that stuff can be adhered to, and certainly at least those protocols are in place. But boy, the whole part of I want mine, like Blake Snell said, and the owner saying, hey, we can't afford to give you yours. Here's how the books are. And the players going, well, we don't trust your bookkeeping methods. We don't trust the books. And the owner saying, well, if you don't trust the books, then we're just not going to play. We can't have that. Everybody, I think, and I think baseball would be a great winner here, only because this is normally the time of year. If you get to July, let's face it. I mean, as a sports fan, and like I said, I cover the Bengals primarily. By the time Bengals training camp starts, unless the Reds are in a pennant race, and they haven't been in one lately, they get phased out. And I think they get phased out by the fan base, right? You're looking for something new and fresh, and it's Bengals season, college football season. Well, baseball's got a chance for at least a couple of months here, probably, to capture some national attention. I mean, I'm not an auto racing fan, and you know what I did on Sunday? I actually watched that darn race from Darlington. I didn't watch all of it, mind you, but I watched it because I needed to see something. I remember that second day Korean baseball was on ESPN. I woke up just woke up at 5 a.m, not even thinking. We all sometimes just wake up in the middle. I went, oh, Korean baseball's on. Let me watch this and just to see it. And look, I didn't know one player from the next. I didn't really care to know one player from the next. I'm watching a live sporting event. So, yeah, that part to me is get something done so we can see sports.
I told Chris the other day that I would kill for a Canisius Wagner women's lacrosse game.
Yeah, right, correct. Right, absolutely. No question. Give me field hockey. Give me anything. Right, no question.
Well, you just answered one of my questions, which was I was going to ask you if you'd watched the NASCAR or any of the golf or anything that took place over the weekend.
Oh, no doubt.
When it comes to, and you mentioned the word hope, and hope is huge in our field of work. When it comes to somebody in their mental health and recovery, the first thing in the foundation that you try to lay out for them is hope. So sports has such a big part in providing hope. It did so after 9/11, especially baseball. And so, I'm really holding out hope that there's a season. If they do have an 80-81 game season, how do you feel like the Reds are positioned this year to compete?
I think the position great, and especially because the DH is going to come in, and I like the fact that the two leagues have different rules. I like the fact that the DH is in the AL, it's not in the NL, but I get why you're doing this, right? You're trying to save pitchers a little bit of extra wear and tear, and you're going to have some expanded rosters. And if you look at the Reds, I think they're positioned probably as good as anybody in the National League for to have the designated hitter. I mean, Nick Castellanos is probably better served being a DH than being an outfielder. And you have that glut of outfielders, right? I mean, this is kind of that whole scenario of you got 5 guys for 3 spots or 4 guys for 3 spots. And yeah, you can always say it works itself out, and it does probably, right? Somebody isn't hitting for a week and you put somebody else in, you can platoon, in left field with Winker and Phillip Ervin, you can maybe platoon in center field with Senzel and Akiyama. You can do a lot of things creatively, but you can also say, well, wait, I can take the piece that I'm trying to fit in there and go, hey, you're the DH. And I think they're positioned great for that. I think the shame of it is what we as fans and media members in this marketplace have wanted for the last 4 or 5 years of go do something, do anything. And they went above and beyond and did something and did anything. The first signing was one where you're like, oh, Moustakas, that's nice. And then all of a sudden it's, wait a minute, they went and got this kid from Japan. Oh, that's nice. Wait a minute, they're getting Nick Castellanos, and then they're going to get another pitcher on top of it. They went above and beyond to put themselves in a point where you go, hey, this got a chance to maybe be a fun season for a change, a chance to watch a winner, to maybe if things fall right, to watch a team that can win the division. And then all of a sudden, boom, we got nothing, and we're sitting here hoping. So yeah, to answer that question, I think they're positioned great for it, and especially I think in a shortened season. The wear and tear on a pitching staff, I think they're pretty well situated for that. I think you got some guys that are durable. Trevor Bauer's fairly durable. Luis Castillo's proven to be durable. Sonny Gray's durable. Wade Miley's pretty durable. DeSclafani's been, other than the injury a couple of years ago, coming back, I think is going to prove to be durable. I think you got yourselves every piece you can want to compete in the Central Division. So, the key is don't get off to a 1-8 start in an 81 game season, right? Because if you do that, you are completely DOA.
Well, I'll switch gears and talk a little Bengals with you for a minute.
Sure.
I know the Bengals, like the Reds, did quite a bit to try to improve themselves. Did they do enough, do you think, to maybe get to 8-8 for this year?
It's probably a stretch because don't forget you still have a rookie quarterback, right? And as much as we're looking forward to watching Joe Burrow evolve, expecting miracles from rookie quarterbacks is hard to do, and because the jury's out. I do think this: when you're a 2-14 team, you can't fix every hole in one offseason. It takes multiple offseasons. The great thing about football is, and we've seen this before, it doesn't take, like in the Reds' circumstance, it doesn't take 5 to 7 years. It can take 2 or 3 years. You fill some holes in an offseason with a draft by getting a franchise quarterback, by getting hopefully a wide receiver of the future, by plugging some holes at linebacker. Then in free agency, you plugged some holes at corner. You got DJ Reader to put on the defensive line. You're adding a piece that really you kind of can count into this group as well in Jonah Williams, who didn't play last year. So that's another piece to it. But you can't fix it all in one off season. So I think they've done enough to certainly improve themselves. I mean, this wasn't a team last year that was – if you look back, and you can probably look at every team in the NFL, there were 3 to 5 games that they lost that you could argue they were in and could have won. I mean, go back to the Seattle game. 3 times they're down deep in Seattle territory and kind of give that game away. There were a handful of games like that, and that was not a good team last year. I mean, let's face it, that team had a lot of holes. Injuries kind of affected it. You missed your starting left tackle in Jonah Williams the year, AJ Green missing a year. You didn't address linebacker, and that proved to be an ugly area. But even a 2-14 team that had a lot of flaws was in a lot of games. So it doesn't take a lot to get yourself to that 6, 7, 8 win plateau. So is it possible? Yeah. I just don't think it's probable in one off season to expect that. But I would expect if you can see some incremental improvement, and we can watch Joe Burrow week to week, because he's going to have one of those 9 for 24s with 3 interceptions, and you're going to go, why did they draft this guy? It's the nature of the beast at that position. But if you can see him bounce back from that performance to a performance the week after and build and build and build and go, okay, yep, that guy can play. You can see he can play. He's not there yet, but he can play. I think you can certainly get yourself back in the playoff mix within a 2 or 3 year window, and that's kind of the way the league has been.
With I know it was a few weeks ago, the NFL draft and what the Bengals did. Were you overall pleased with the direction they went?
Yeah, that second round pick was the most interesting one because there was a general belief that starting that day they were going to get enough offers to maybe go backwards, and there were a lot of places they could have gone, but they chose not to. They loved T. Higgins. They decided to keep the pick, and some of that was a preemptive strike too, because John Ross this is his last year of his rookie contract, and they decided not to give him the 5th-year option so he can walk after this year. Mm-hmm. We still don't know if A.J. Green will be a Bengal in 2021. He certainly is going to be in 2020, but do they do something long-term with him? Do they let him walk? Is he not the A.J. Green we remember him being, right? I mean, that's a possibility too. So this is kind of hey, we got a chance to get a good player now, but also a guy for the future at that position. And then I do a bunch of mock drafts. I probably didn't do as many this year because it wasn't as much fun because the number 1 pick was pretty much already salted away, so there wasn't a lot of guessing work there. But a lot of the mock drafts I did, I had them going linebacker in the 3rd and 4th round just because there were a lot of guys that fit that area of the draft. They didn't take the 2 guys that I had kind of mocked to them there, although I liked the kid from Appalachian State a whole lot. I thought they did a great job. They didn't address linebacker a ton in free agency. They did get Josh Bynes from Baltimore, but look, he's a journeyman who they needed a body, and you had to get somebody. So in the draft, what do? They go get 3 linebackers, 2 that they think can maybe play right away. So I thought they did a really good job of addressing need, but also never reaching. And I give credit to Duke Tobin and to Zach Taylor and his staff for that. I thought they did a terrific job, at least on paper.
No, I did too. I'll switch gears on you for a minute. You've been doing this for a long, long time. I was just curious, over the years, is there a favorite sports interview that you've done? Anybody that really kind of stood out and why?
Yeah, I'll give it to you. And I've been asked this question a few times on a podcast I do. And I grew up, I don't know why. My dad grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and was a Dodger fan. So even living here as a kid, somehow as a kid, I was a Dodger fan, even during the Big Red Machine years. But we went to a ton of Reds games. But, of course, you never really always want to follow your father's footsteps. So instead of me following what my father was as a Dodger fan and then following everybody in this area and being a Reds fan, I decided I was going to become a San Diego Padre fan. Don't ask me why. I did. I fell in love with them in the late 70s. I don't know. I have no earthly idea. And along in the early 80s kind of came this fat guy who could hit. And I thought, man, that's me. I like that guy. That guy is me. And it was Tony Gwynn. And I was working at the Cincinnati Post. I started there in 1991 and worked there till 2004. And I did a lot of different beats. And for a couple year span, I was technically the backup Bengals beat writer and the backup Reds beat writer, which was you'd kind of fill in on days to give somebody a day off or to make it a 2-man beat. And one day the Padres were in town and my sports editor knew I was a big fan. And he said, listen, don't be a fanboy here. Act like a pro. But if you want, go do a nice piece on Tony Gwynn being in town. He may not be back through here a lot more. Tony might have been approaching 3,000 hits. So it was something at least newsworthy to do. And I thought, oh, this will be awesome. So, this happens to a lot of us in life, right? You meet your hero or the guy you grow up and you're thinking, man, I hope he's not a jerk. I just, honestly, just be professional to me. I'll be professional to you. So it was after batting practice in the locker room. Pirate locker room was open, and it wasn't very crowded. I mean, San Diego didn't have a lot of people that traveled. So I walked up. I said, "Hey, Tony, I'm Richard Skinner with the Cincinnati Post. You got a couple of minutes to talk?" He goes, "Hang on, man." He goes, "I'm going to get a piece of chicken and a roll, and I'll be right back." And I thought, yeah, I've heard that before. Came back, sat down. He goes, "What do you need?" We talked for 30 minutes, and it was so cool because, he had that distinctive voice, that was, I can't even replicate it. But just talking to him on a variety of topics. And then, of course, I have to go back and after a 30-minute interview to try to transcribe that on tape takes forever, and then try to write it on a deadline took forever. And then my head swimming because I talked to the guy who I grew up idolizing, and it's one of those things that I look back now that he's passed, sadly, and they had a special last week on an MLB.com, and I kind of was crying a little bit watching, thinking, man, that guy was everything I was hoping he was going to be. And it is a little off the beaten path. I know there's a lot bigger names than Tony Gwynn, but for me to meet a guy that I just grew up watching going, I love that guy. I love the way he plays. And then to have him be as good as he was and give me that kind of time and make it a good interview, that was to me the one that will always stand out.
When you said San Diego, Tony Gwynn popped into my head because it's kind of the iconic picture of the franchise for so many years. And my favorite Tony Gwynn story, somebody in the media had set up an interview time with them at the ballpark, and he was in I think they had a batting cage under the stadium.
Yep.
And it was in the evening, everyone else had gone, and he found Tony Gwynn was in the batting cage with a cup between his legs so he could spit in it while he batted, and just hitting balls over and over and over and over and
Yep.
over, and talk to him while he hit.
Yep. And he was the guy, he'll talk to anybody, anytime, anywhere. But, like I said, it's one of those ones where I've seen kids walk up to an athlete they've idolized, maybe looking for an autograph and get shunned. And look, they can't sign everybody's autograph, but you want to make sure that guy that you really admire from afar, that when you meet them up close, they are as real as you're hoping they're going to be. And he absolutely was.
Over the years, I've enjoyed watching your shows, and you do a great job. I'm just curious, was there anybody who was a role model or a mentor to you that really kind of maybe took you under their wing and helped you learn the business and the craft that you do?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've kind of done a lot of this to some degree. I'm a print journalism major by trade, but I did some radio in college. And there was a guy that he still works at the University of Kentucky, a guy named Keith Elkins. And Keith worked in alumni relations at the University of Kentucky, but he was a sportscaster for a period of time in Lexington before he did that. And when I was fortunate enough at the University of Kentucky to get selected to do radio play-by-play my senior year on the student station, and Keith was the color commentator. And it can be a little intimidating because you're not a professional yet. You think you are. You're 21 years old. You're all full of yourself, and you think, I know everything. And he couldn't have been better to me. And gave me tips in a way that wasn't, I know everything, you don't, kid. There were times where he went out of his way to praise me for some things that even he said, hey, that's even better than I think I could have done it. And I don't think that was false praise. You can usually tell the difference. And then in my print journalism career, same thing. I was thinking of this guy the other day. He passed away about 4 or 5 years ago. I worked at a small paper in Maysville, Kentucky. Was basically my first job out of college, a small daily newspaper. And there was an older guy that he was the sports editor, and he did things a different way, right? And I was the new up-and-comer, and I do things the kind of the new school way. And I'm watching that now at my age, because I took a couple guys under my wing that look, hey, you don't have to do it my way, but here's the way things can be done. And I remember he had me over for dinner about 2 months into it, and there was a little animosity because I was doing things differently, and people were telling him I kind of like the way he does things. And you're like, well, wait a minute, what about the way I did things? And I thought, okay, this is either going to go really well or really poorly. And he couldn't have been better to me. He talked about just the area, because I grew up in northern Kentucky and in the Cincinnati area, but I wasn't familiar with that part of Kentucky per se, and the coaches and the people and what they wanted and liked and all those things. And I can still remember that dinner, just the fact that he took the time to take me over and kind of say, hey, here's how things are here down here. You can do things your way. Hey, I get it. You're a young guy. You want to do it your way, but here's some things I can help you with. I'll never forget that. And I've always, as I've gone along, I've always tried to take some people under my wing in that regard, because I get it. I see young journalists that'll pop in even Paul Brown Stadium sometimes, and they're looking around wide-eyed thinking, this is scary. I'll give an example. I was covering the University of Kentucky back in the early 2000s, and there's a guy – I used to work at the Enquirer, a guy named Ryan Ernst. And Ryan came down, and you could tell I'm looking, and I knew who Ryan was. He was really young, and the Enquirer really didn't cover UK. The Post the paper I worked for at the time did. We covered him on a daily basis. I did. And I could tell he was scared. And I just walked over. I said, "Hey, Ryan, I'm Richard Skinner." He goes, "I know you are." I said, "Hey, are you looking for somebody in particular? Can I help you with it?" And he, every time I see him, he goes, "I still can't believe that you actually went out of your way as a competitor to tell me." I said, "Dude, you look like you were completely out of touch with what was going on." And I've been there, man. We've all been there. We all walk into a clubhouse or a press box or something for the first time. And that stuff is intimidating. I mean, it really can be until you work your way around it. And I've never forgotten those guys that kind of massaged me through it, because it helped me kind of get over that stage fright a little bit.
That's a great story. I appreciate you sharing that. You said something, Richard. You said, you don't have to do it my way. And that, as a peer-run organization, that's what we preach, right? I can only tell you what works for me. I can't tell you what you need to do, but I can share my experience and tell you what has worked for me. So we really appreciate you sharing that. Last thing we wanted to ask you about was adversity and overcoming adversity. You know, our entire community is engaged actively in the process right now of overcoming some adversity that is in their life. And our job is to, as we say, we like you, but our job is to get rid of you. Meaning, come, let us help you out, and then get you back into the community at large. Do you have any stories of people that you've seen or you know that have overcome something to get back to the top of their game?
I'll use myself as an example, and I'm probably like a lot of the workforce. I've been riffed before, you know. I've been a reduction enforced in radio twice. When I left the Enquirer in 2014, I lined up a job doing the job I do now, which is web editor at Channel 12. I was doing anchoring stuff as a 1099 employee on the side, basically, and doing some things with the Sports Authority on the side. But they decided they want to hire me full time to run their website, the sports website, and be the web editor for them. And unfortunately, I had a non-compete at the place I was at, the Enquirer, and we had a real battle to try to get out of that non-compete, and it got to the point where I finally couldn't get out of it, and I said, well, I'm just going to have to sit out for I actually got it reduced from 6 months to 3 months, but I thought, these 3 months are going to suck. I'm not going to have a paycheck. I've got savings. My wife works, but this is not going to be fun. And as I mentioned, I coach high school basketball. I also coach AAU basketball, and I was coaching a really good AAU team at the time. And I always, after, you know, we played in a lot of tournaments, I don't want to say nationally, but we played fairly regionally in about a 5 or 6 state area, and traveled some. And we played some really good competition. And of course, as a coach, after you lose a game, and, you know, sometimes it's just, hey, they're better. We got to pick ourselves up, go on to next week, all of those things. And I remember feeling sorry for myself one day before I went to practice about, man, this sucks. I'm not working. I know I got a job. It's waiting for me, but this is not fun. And I really thought, I said, you know what? You keep telling your players that you got to bounce back from a loss and you got to get off your ass and get back in the game and all those things. And you're not living that. You're feeling sorry for yourself. Because I literally didn't want to go to practice. I thought, you know what? I love practice. I like practice more than games. I love being at practice. And I thought to myself, you know what? That's enough of this. If you're going to tell the kids to do it this way, to hey, when we lose and we got to come back next week and we're going to Indy, we're playing another tough tournament, and you got to shake this off, we got to get better, we got to grow from it, then you better do the same thing. And that helped me through that so much. And maybe it was just those kids helped me through it because it gave me something to do and gave me a sense of purpose. But it also gave me, you know what? Don't be a BSer. You can BS yourself sometimes, but they're going to be able to read this. They're going to be able to read your BS here at some point. So just pick yourself up. So for me, like I said, I'm not alone. I know people have lost their jobs. I lost my job. I lost it twice. Like I said, the industry I'm in is a tough industry. You can get laid off because somebody bought your company and you make X number of dollars and they say you got to go. And that happened to me twice, and that is what it is. And like I said, you can either feel sorry for yourself or you can reinvent yourself. And I feel lucky. I mean, I've been able to reinvent myself a lot of different times, from print journalist to doing talk radio to doing TV. And I've worked hard at that. But there have been times where I've sat there and gone, woe is me. And you know what? If you're going to, like I said, if I'm going to tell my players to stop the woe is me, then I had to stop the woe is me.
I appreciate you sharing a personal story. And that's a great tie back to what you said earlier about the community piece and how important that is.
And I was going to say, just one of the things we really try to instill in folks here is resiliency. You know, when you've got a mental health issue, and the folks that we work with, you're going to have 2 steps forward, you're going to have a step back, but you know, trying to instill that resiliency in folks so that you're not taking 2 steps and 3 steps back, you know, really does, you know, try to help them so that they can be more independent in the community and really try to be that stepping stone.
But until you get to the personal accountability stage, you really don't have the opportunity to keep going up. So, being able to do that is a great step. I was going to say, it's nice to be held accountable too. It's good to be accountable to somebody. You're accountable to the team, and we're going to let you hide away and not do your job.
No question. No question. And like I said, I felt fortunate that I had that as a buffer, for lack of a better term. We all need that buffer. And I'm one of those people that probably would tell you that I don't need your help and I don't need their help and I don't need anybody's help. I can do it myself and I can grit my way through it. And I usually do, but occasionally we all do. I mean, you need a buffer. You got to have it. And I felt fortunate to have those kids as a buffer.
How did the basketball season go for you? I know you guys didn't get to finish out the tournament, but how did you guys do this year?
Yeah, actually, we did. We in Northern Kentucky, we actually got through. We didn't get through the state tournament, but the school I coach at, Beechwood High School, we made the regional tournament. We're a small school. It's the second straight year we made the regional. We actually made the final last year. This year, we had lost a bunch of seniors, but it was great to get back. And we actually got through our regional tournament. And then, unfortunately, the state tournament was starting the next week, and that's what got canceled. And it stinks. A couple of those kids on that AAU team I told you about, they played for the team that won the regional, Covenant Catholic. And as soon as that regional was over, I went up and hugged them both and said, "Hey, man, I'm going to love you guys forever. You know that." I said, "Good luck in the state tournament." I haven't seen them since. And I feel so bad that they didn't get that sense of closure that, look, they just accomplished something great. It sucked because they're my rival as a high school coach, and they're my rival on the court. But those kids will always be linked to me. We won a championship together, an AAU national championship, and so they'll always be with me. And I still can sit there. I can vividly remember hugging the one, crying to each other, saying, "Best of luck. Hopefully I'll see you down at state." I was looking forward to going on making a trip down there, and it got shut away. And that's why I said I feel sorry for all those seniors. I'm thinking of some of those senior basketball players at Beechwood that I know, a couple of them that play baseball. They didn't get that season, and I feel bad. But, like I've told and one of the kids that played for me, I just sent him a graduation video. And I said, "Listen," it's the same scenario I told my daughter, "If this is the worst thing that happens in your life, man, it's going to be a good life. Trust me. I know it stinks now, and everything's always short-term, right? We always focus on here. If the worst thing that happens is you miss tossing your cap in the air with a bunch of people and going out and having a party that night, you're going to be okay. I promise you. You're going to be okay."
Well, Richard, I thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us for this, and you were just fantastic. Thank you.
Guys, thanks very much. I appreciate it. Anytime.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Take care. Thanks.
Bye. Bye. Oh, he's going.
Unmute.
He's still talking on the phone.
All right. Yep, you guys are good to go.
Yay, thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
And thank you to Richard Skinner for joining us for the interview.
But we're gonna do a little trivia. I'm sending a little trivia out on the chat, and see if you can be the first one to respond to it. The question is, what does Marty Brennaman say at the end of a game when the Reds win? Anybody knows a little quote or saying that he says after each one?
And trivia corollary, when what's the name of the stadium downtown?
Great American Ballpark.
Great American Ballpark was built. You know, they have Joe Nuxall's slogan on there, right? Rounding third and headed for home.
Yes.
They wanted to put Marty Brennaman's logo on, and the team wouldn't let them.
And you know this how?
Because when we I just learned this a couple weeks ago. Oh, we were talking about them going to see, I was going to say Paul Giamatti. He's an actor. Bart Giamatti. When they got in trouble and had to go to the principal's
All
office.
good, probably play Bart though.
Probably so, yeah. Yeah, that's why I was doing some research on Marty Brennaman and the trouble he has caused with his attitude. And that was one of the things that popped up.
Let's see here. Oh, and John, you got it. Thank you. And the answer is, and this one belongs to the Reds.
Very nice, John. Good job.
Great job with that.
Yes. So, we do trivia and we do a joke. And you guys have been so patient with our jokes. We appreciate that.
Well, not our jokes. It's been my
They
jokes.
were your
so
jokes,
we
yeah.
decided to alternate. So I could take a little break because I didn't want to just, humor is not necessarily my strongest point.
And I feel kind of responsible because Chris vetted the jokes with me before we went on the air last 2 times, and I could have shut the whole thing down, but I didn't. So I said, you know what? Let me take responsibility for the joke. So I had a team working this morning, and we came up with a couple jokes. So the golfer and his caddy are talking, and the golfer says, "You've got to be the worst caddy in the world." And the caddy says, "I don't think so, sir. That'd be way too much of a coincidence." All right.
On that note,
Yeah.
I think we'll take jokes from the audience.
All right. That's fine.
If you have a good sports joke and you want to send it in,
All right. I got one. Yeah, that's true. Go ahead.
we can we'll do that. So if you have a joke for next week, email Bill or I, or send it on the chat on the show, and we'll include it in next week's show.
Yes, I'm gonna dig this hole further. Last one. What do you call a bunch of millionaires sitting around watching the Super Bowl?
Bunch of millionaires sitting around watching. Well, that'd be the guys not in the game playing.
You're on the right track. Yeah.
'Cause those guys would all be millionaires, but I don't know.
The Dallas Cowboys.
The Dallas Cowboys.
That's self-deprecating humor, you guys.
Well, on that note, we're gonna switch gears and get to we've had all this great information today, from jokes to trivia to Richard Skinner. We got to wrap things up with our 7-point creed.
What we do, but before we do that, just give me 15 seconds.
Okay.
So can we just call it tied on 2 really bad jokes apiece?
Is that what you did too today? You wanted to be tied with me?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted my joke responsibility to be over. So please, if you know
Oh,
one,
wait a
send it
minute.
in.
We have a joke on the chat.
Thank you.
Amanda says, "What did the baseball glove say to the ball?"
What did the baseball glove say to the ball?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Let's see if we get a response.
What did the baseball glove say to the ball?
Although I will say, though, that when we started doing the jokes, our number of viewers increased. So there's something about just horrible jokes that increases
We'll
people's attention to want to see our show.
And we'll know how bad our jokes are if we notice that people just start popping in with 5 minutes left in the show.
All
Just
right,
to get the joke. Just
here's
get
the joke. So what did the baseball glove say to the ball? Catch you later. That one might be the best joke we've had
that, no,
of the 5.
yeah, it could be, but again, we talked a lot internally about setting bars.
Our joke bar is very low.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, the 7-point creed, what we've been talking about when we wrap up each show, the wisdom of John Wooden, and just his philosophy in life that I think we all could learn and benefit from. And the first point that we talked about 2 weeks ago was integrity, personal integrity. And last week we talked about helping others. And today, the third point on the 7-point creed is make each day your masterpiece. And what he means by that is, you can't change yesterday, and a better tomorrow will be the result of what you do today. So if you are out there giving your best for today, chances are tomorrow's going to be a much better day for it. And so, in this present moment right now, it's when you've got the opportunity to really make a difference, to make a change in something.
I'm really glad you used the phrase you just said. You said in this present moment right now, because the whole premise of this piece of his 7 points, to me, is all about mindfulness. And we talk a ton about mindfulness here, staying in the moment and make each day your masterpiece. It's, do everything you can right now to take care of and control what you can control.
And it's so easy to mentally be distracted by what happened yesterday or what's not going right at this moment.
Right.
I think it's so important to be mindful, to live in the moment, make the most of each day, and to make each day, like he says, your masterpiece.
I like
When
that
you
a
do
lot.
that, each day is going to be better. Each day after the next is going to be that much better.
Yeah, I like that.
So on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up for today.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining us. And thanks for putting up with us for our first interview. Next week, we hope to be bringing you another interview with a former UC Bearcat basketball player, Kevin Johnson, who's just a wonderful guy.
Wonderful
Chris and I
guy.
had so much fun talking to this guy. He has stories forever. And so much of what he's doing now is tied in directly to what we do. He's actually in the behavioral health field as a case manager, which I think is really cool. So he's going to come talk to us about what he learned in sports and how he applies that today to help people. So you guys, thanks for joining us. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
See you next week.
Just end.